Yale University, it takes 25 calories of
Mm.
plants to make 1 calorie of beef because the cow has to eat crops for 18 months to get them up to slaughter weight. The University of Oxford is saying that raising animals takes up 75% of our farmland because, again, we have to grow crops to feed all those animals. And they said that
Mm. Mm.
beef required 36 times more land than peas. According to the United Nations, again, 70 billion land animals are fed and killed every year across the world for food that we don't need to eat. 70 billion, that's 10 times the human
Yeah.
population.
We are a
Yeah.
majority plant-based household in my household,
Yeah.
so we do consume meat. But I don't have any disagreement with Chase.
The animal rights stuff, again, I do feel passionately about it. I do think it is the right thing to do to eat a plant-based diet.
There's a lot of different ways that we can make an impact on the world because we're working together, we're all in this together.
Let's go ahead
Yeah.
and get to our first call here. We've got Chase. Chase, who is calling in from Idaho. Chase, you're our first call for tonight on Truth Wanted. What's going on?
Hey guys, thanks for having my call. Thanks for taking my call. I got a topic I'm hoping to talk about the environmental benefits of a plant-based diet.
Yeah, so I see, obviously, Chase, I think you probably know my position on this. I do identify as a vegan. I've been doing that since 2020, in part because of this show. I think a lot of vegans have challenged me on this notion, and I think a plant-based diet has a lot of ancient roots and, of course, a lot of benefits. Of course, you can find benefits to pretty much any diet. That's the problem with, first of all, health sciences. If we're talking about sciences in general, is the most maligned science out there. And what I mean by that is it is the most industry motivated science I think possible. You can find studies for every single diet possible. But like, it's also very hard, there's a lot of people that have different ideas. Experts can't agree on stuff, but regardless, if we're talking about what's best for people and what's best for like the environment, yeah, I don't think you can compare. I do think a plant-based diet, more so than any other kind of diet, kind of wins out of that. Is that your view, Chase?
Yes, it is. I got about 10 statistics to share with you real quick.
Oh my God. Oh man, don't turn this into like the statistics show, but if you want to give like one or two, I'd be interested in hearing.
Okay, well, from Yale University, it takes 25 calories of
Mm.
plants to make 1 calorie of beef because the cow has to eat crops for 18 months to get them up to slaughter weight. So that's called a food conversion
Yeah, yeah,
ratio. So 25 to 1. And
yeah.
so you can imagine the amount of land that takes. So that's just one.
Yep, I agree with you there. My understanding is that most crops produced today actually aren't for direct human consumption. They are actually for livestock. Like that is just a fact, right? Just because the amount of crops it takes to feed, cows and pigs and all kinds of animals, just ends up taking more than what we consume directly, as a result, which is
Yeah.
interesting to think about. So yeah, I
Yeah.
can at least I
Yeah.
can verify on that front, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And like the University of Oxford is saying that raising animals takes up 75% of our farmland because, again, we have to grow crops to feed all those animals. And they said that
Mm. Mm.
beef required 36 times more land than peas.
Yeah, yeah, I believe it. Again, I'm not looking at this directly in front of me, but I mean that sounds true to what I've seen. Of course, I am the only vegan host at the ACA, as far as I'm aware. Okay, I understand I am the minority, and when I talk about these issues, some people get very annoyed about it. They wonder why. What is the relation when we talk about this? For me, a plant-based diet ties back to ethics, and we talk about ethics in a lot of other categories, right? Like religion dominates categories of ethics, and I consume a plant-based diet for ethical reasons, which is why I find it to be relevant to the things that we talk about here. So that, for anybody who's wondering why are we talking about this on this show, because that's pretty much the reason why. I do think it falls into a
Yeah.
category in which we should talk about whether, and if you disagree with me on any of that, that's fine, but like there's a reason why I hold the views that I do. And Chase, I think we've talked. I think we've talked before on Discord. So I think I know your views as well. But Jimmy, I want to give you a chance to chime in. What are your thoughts on plant-based diets in general? Do you like them? Do you hate them? Do you think they're the worst? What do you think?
No, I think they're really great. We are a
Yeah.
majority plant-based household in my household.
Yeah.
So we do consume meat, but we try to stick more to plants or fruits and vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
Nuts. But I don't have any disagreement with Chase. I think
Yeah.
that the amount of land that is used to foster the development of huge herds of animals to be slaughtered detracts from the natural environment. It breaks food chains. It breaks natural habitats and the ecosystem. And it also is not really all that healthy. The human body is not really designed to eat as much meat or as we consume on a yearly basis. As far as I can tell, I don't have probably as much statistics as Chase does. But this idea that, oh, I'm American, I need my steak, that's actually like not even consistent with what our natural diet should be as humans. So no issues there, Chase.
When we get into the natural
point.
I know, like I'm just saying this as a preface because every time somebody brings up natural diet, everybody always says, "Oh, what's natural? What's this?" It's like, okay, look, even if you bring all that kind of stuff out of it, right? I think you can look at you can make several different arguments, right? Even besides ethics or besides what's best for people. I agree with Chase when we're talking about the environmental stuff, right? Like I still think even if you're a hardcore carnivore, right? Because they're out there and they're growing in numbers, right? These people who want to do these meat-based diets, you cannot convince me that a meat-based diet is going to be more environmentally friendly than a plant-based one on pretty much every level. I mean, obviously there are some crops that are problematic, that you like some tofu and other kinds of stuff, for example, can be like huge strains on water and stuff. There's quibbles and these different things, but again, we bring up this fact that, look, for every cow that gets raised or every pig that gets raised, they have to be fed crops, and that uses arable land that can be used for food that can be made directly for people. So it's like, I don't know. There's and when it comes to climate change, I think plant-based diets win pretty much. I don't think it's contentious.
Yeah.
You also see dwindling populations of birds and bees and different animals that rely on the natural plant life in that area that's just being cleared for grass to be planted or whatever.
Yeah. Chase, you had something you want to say?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. According to the United Nations, 70% of the rainforest deforestation in the Amazon is to make room for cattle to graze, and then according to the United Nations, again, 70 billion land animals are fed and killed every year across the world for food that we don't need to eat. 70 billion, that's 10 times the human population. So if we didn't breed those animals into existence, then we would free up so much land that we could then plant more trees to sequester the carbon emissions from our cars and everything. But yeah, I appreciate your time. I don't want to take up too much time. I'm a activist for animal rights and for human rights and for the environment, and I just encourage everybody to take this stuff seriously, because there's a lot of different ways that we can make an impact on the world, and part of it is through our consumer habits, through these mass economic boycotts. It's not just one person stuck thinking like they got no power, because we're working together. We're all in this together, and but also we can pressure politicians to change laws, and we can talk to different companies and tell them, hey, we want you to sell this product instead, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Chase. Thanks. You're actually fairly short when it came to time there. So I appreciate your brevity on that. But I mean, like, I broadly agree with what Chase has to say, and again, I understand when I talk about animal ethics, I'm usually the minority in the room when it comes to stuff. And this is an opinion that I've had to cultivate over the years since I've been a host. When I first started hosting, I did not have the same views and ideas that I do now, but probably in part when I talk about animal ethics, I talk about it in the same vein that I talk about racism, in the same vein that I talk about homophobia or transphobia. That this is just as important to me as other human rights issues, because animal rights issues do become human rights issues in a very real way. And unfortunately, in my experience, those conversations tend to make people, especially even in this space, which is a space which we like to say that we're open-minded and that we're open to, critically thinking about stuff. I think it makes people uncomfortable. It certainly made me uncomfortable when first presented this stuff, because again, this isn't like the typical atheist talking point, but I think it is something that we are going to talk about more and more as years go on. And I'm going to be the guy that says, you know what, I've been talking about this for a while. I'm going to be saying that 5 years from now, I hope. So anyway, that's my thoughts on it. Jimmy, did you have any more thoughts on that particular issue?
I
Yeah.
agree. I think
Yeah.
it's related to
Yeah.
atheist talking points, though,
Yeah.
because it challenges a traditional mindset that people don't really give a lot of attention to.
Yeah.
If you challenge somebody on maybe what they believe, there's really no difference.
Mhm.
They believe that they're supposed to be meat eaters, consuming large portions of meat throughout their life.
Mm.
I mean, how many of us grew up thinking that milk was like the most healthy thing ever,
Yeah.
right? Our
Yeah.
parents rammed milk down our throat, and
Yeah.
we just accepted it.
Yeah.
And people do the same thing with their religions that they
True.
do with their diets. And this it needs to be challenged. It is a conversation that should excuse me, happen.
I appreciate that, Jimmy, because sometimes I talk about this and people don't like it. But you know what? I'm glad you're okay with that. We do have open lines, folks. So we are waiting for you guys to call in to talk to us. I will say, while we're still talking about this issue, Jimmy, there's two topics people say in polite conversation that you shouldn't bring up. One is
Mhm.
politics and one is
Mhm.
religion, right? We've all heard
Mhm.
this. I would propose there is a third category, and it is what people eat and their diets and stuff, right? I find that that's an issue that people are sensitive, and rightly so, right? Because what we consume directly affects our health, and talking about people's health in public spaces, oftentimes is very impolite. But even more so than that, it talks about our deeply ingrained beliefs about what we think is right and wrong, right? When we talk about consumer activism, things like that, people tend to kind of, not have the best response to it. I mean, recently we talked about the stuff that was happening with the Harry Potter game with J.K. Rowling. People saying, "Oh, it's unethical if you buy this game." There are big debates about that. What does it mean when you buy a game that a billionaire is just going to make basically what is equivalent to a penny to us off of, right? It's like it's really hard. When it comes to like the animal rights stuff, again, I do feel passionately about it. I do think it is the right thing to do to eat a plant-based diet, but it's again, I think that my diet and also what I thought about food and animals and treatment of it was in part influenced by religion, at least on some level. There is, of course, the Bible quotes that people bring up that say that all the animals are supposed to be dominion over man, right? And then in the New Testament, all the meats are supposed to be are clean or are made clean for us to eat. So, people bring that up and say, look, we don't have to worry about this, even though if we did really evolve and we did have, an evolutionary timeline that gave us the ability to feel through natural causes, we were probably not the only animals that can feel, especially pain. And I don't believe we are. I think other animals can. Anyway, I'm ranting
Oh,
about this
absolutely.
because I'm waiting for other folks to give us a call. But Jimmy, you feel free to respond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, challenging a traditional view like that, and
Yeah.
that works to challenge multiple views that people
Mm.
have. So if you're to challenge them on what they eat and what's in the Bible,
Yeah.
that kind of is a lot more maybe brain power or maybe life altering decisions that people
Yeah.
are willing to commit to.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's a big chunk to take off of.
It is. It is.
I I understand, and
Yeah.
I think that people kind of have a history of knowing that they're doing something wrong, but they don't have a way to fix it. So they
Mm.
kind of just keep doing it and don't talk about it.
Yeah.
I'm so hesitant to bring this up because I don't want to seem insensitive. But and I'm not making a comparison to say that they're equal in scale, but
Yeah.
I will say our the people who wrote the Constitution, for example,
Yeah.
believed that slavery was immoral,
Yeah.
but they
Well,
still owned and raped their slaves. They
yeah.
still did it.
I was gonna
And
say,
it's
I don't know if all of them believed they were immoral. I mean, most of them were slave owners, right?
yeah. So,
So
so
yeah.
Thomas Jefferson famously said, "There's nothing that we can really do about it right now, but we need to figure it out." And
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
it's kind of like, well, why don't you do something about it instead of having 13 children with your slaves?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and again, I don't think that there's any worse scar on the history of America than slavery, right? Maybe the slaughter of Native Americans, but I'm not comparing those two either. I don't think that the life of a chicken is equal to, you know, the life of a slave. But
Yeah.
what I am saying is that, you know, it's not the first time that people have kind of just facilitated this unethical lifestyle and
Sure.
just let it kind of coast by while they try and figure things out. I
No,
don't
I
know.
see what you mean.
Hey,
I hear the comparison you're making, and of course, if people ask me, "Oh, would I save a human life over a chicken?" Of course, I value
yeah,
humans more. That's not the question. I'm not eating people right now. I had the choice to eat other animals, and if I could do otherwise, then why wouldn't I? Is the question. One thing that's interesting to me is, of course, when you see the very slow change. When reading the history of animal ethics, particularly in the law, is quite fascinating because what's legal is unexpected, and how slow some of these recent changes have been made and are still being made is also quite unexpected. Because you have to wonder if there are ethical, if the law even recognizes that there are even ethical and unethical treatments of particular animals. You have to wonder by what degree, why is it different for a livestock than for a dog? If you were to treat a dog in the same way that we treat cows and pigs, you could go to jail, right? There are repercussions for it, but
hmm
you don't go to jail for doing the same things to a cow or pig, and you have to wonder why. If a pig, especially, right? I mean, like you've seen Babe, like they've made they've made live action movies with pigs. They're very smart. They
yeah.
do things like
Oh, sure.
we do kind of pick and choose, and the truth is, it is based on our culture. We value some animals more than others because some are traditionally valued as companion animals more. And when you really look at the differences there, that's partly a reason why uh, I bring this up to people. It's like, look, if you think treating a dog is the worst thing ever, you pick a dog or you prod a dog with an electric rod or whatever, and you would rightfully be outraged at it. But it's like, look, we do this to other animals all the time. Quite, we do quite worse things to other things, and we justify it by saying, well, we're going to eat them at the end of the day. I don't know. It's very big topic that I don't always get to talk about. So, Chase, I'm glad you gave me an opportunity to at least like dump it on the surface of, because it is probably one of the deepest topics you can really get into on a show like this, in my opinion, at least from what I know about it. But we finally have some folks who want to talk to us, Jimmy, so I don't have to keep talking about this any longer. So now all the people that hate when I bring up this kind of topic can now rejoice, because we're going to be moving on. But before we do, first
I'm happy to talk.
we have a super chat. It's from Katie S, who donates $2 and says, "Is it unethical to eat unfertilized eggs?" Okay, I said we are going to be moving on, but I will respond to this. I mean, if we're talking about chicken eggs, right? There are different vegans that feel differently about this, right? So there's some that say, well, you know, locally raised chickens who are basically raised as companion animals, like you do dogs and cats, can do just fine when you eat their eggs. They actually lay an abundance of eggs because we've basically evolved them to leave that many eggs. That naturally in the wild they didn't do that. That's something that was cultivated over the years, and they lay so much it actually leads to a lot of health problems. So there are some vegans that say, yeah, it's actually fine for those locally sourced eggs. Now the problem is, of course, when you go to the grocery store, you're not buying eggs that are grown that way. At least 99% of the time, right? If you're going to and you're just buying your traditional eggs, it's going to be from factory farms. So there's some vegans that say, well, we can't even actually do that because that's animals' property. Essentially, there's no reason why we should be able to take away an animal. You have to. They would say, well, does a chicken have a right to eat your eggs, or eat another animal's eggs, or you get into these weird arguments about, well, wait, what if does an animal have a right to live in your home or to do these things to you? Like, if you don't think so, you have to wonder why a human can do it to other animals. I mean, people say, well, because we're more sentient and stuff, and again, that it goes into the weeds. But the point is, there are some the term for it is escaping me, but basically animal rights activists who say that, look, we can't even interfere with this process. Even this is unethical. Personally, I think if you're on a local farm and you're eating eggs, I don't really care. But the fact is, most of the time, if you're eating eggs at a restaurant, it's not going to be from that. So anyway, that's my quick aside. Now we're going to move on. Okay, we're moving on now. We got some calls. We have